Giant Goofballs, a New York Giants podcast. Are you a goofball that loves Giants football? If so, sit back and relax. Except you, that person driving. Sit up and keep your eyes on the road. Your ears, though, can still listen as we talk about the team that both excites and frustrates us so much. And now, here are your goofball hosts, Drew and Rob.
Welcome, fellow goofballs, to Two Giant Goofballs, a New York Giants podcast. I am Drew. Hopefully, we'll have Rob on here in a little bit here. He had an emergency pop up. He's not sure if he's going to be able to make it tonight, but you got one Giant Goofball at least here. So let's go in here with our Q&A episode here as promised. So earlier today, we sent out both to our pages and to various Giants groups out there asking people to send in their questions on the New York Football Giants here for the 2023 season. And we got a decent amount of response here, so I wanted to go ahead and share the questions here. Now, one thing I did forget to do when I posted the questions there, I did forget to ask people if they wanted us to use their name or not. So I'm not going to do that because I didn't ask permission. I don't, this day and age of internet safety, some people get freaked out by that kind of stuff here. So I'm not going to go too much into that stuff there, except for a couple of them, because actually one of them is from my dad here, who, you know, those of you guys who watch the show on a regular basis, pops in quite often to the comments here. So first two questions will be his, and the rest of them, like I said, unless it's somebody who comes in live on the chat, because that's different. If you're live in the chat, you're already here. Your name's already out there. All right. So first question my dad had was, will DJ exceed 20 passing touchdowns this year? And I got to think he's going to do that this year. It's you know, with the weapons he has, he's got to be able to do that. If he doesn't do that, one of two things happened here. Either all the weapons got injured, or it's going to be one of those scenarios where, you know, he's just really took a step back big time there. And I just can't believe that either of those two scenarios are going to happen with 15 wide receivers there on the roster now. It's hard to believe that all of those guys are to get injured like that, where there's no weapons whatsoever for him to throw to. So I'm going to go with yes, DJ will go ahead and exceed 20 touchdown passes this season here. Keep in mind, he'll still have a good amount of rushing touchdowns as well. This could be shape up to be like a coming out party year for DJ, the way things are going, really. All right, next question he had was, will Thibodeau get double-digit sacks this year? You know, my heart wants to say yes to this. It really does. The brain in me, as bad as it is, wants to say, I don't think so. I really don't think so, because double-digit sacks, even for players that consistently hit double-digit sacks, they may consistently, but not every single year. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things where if you look at the Hall of Fame careers out there, even those guys are half the time they'll get 10 sacks in the season. You know, they'll have like 6 or 7, then 10 and 12. You know what I mean? That kind of scenario there. So putting that into the law of averages here tells me that Thibodeau probably won't, because that's not something you should expect from a player year in, year out, except the all-time greats, the LTs of the world, the Strahans of the world, that kind of player there. And I can't put him in that kind of level until he proves he is in that kind of level, and he just hasn't done it. That's going to take some time to do. And to be honest, he probably never will. Most players don't reach that height. That's not a normal thing. We shouldn't expect that of a player. That's not fair to put that on him. So, again, I'm going to say he does not. So, yeah, like I said, hopefully I'm wrong on that one, though, because I do think he's going to be a damn good player in this league, and I do think he will have seasons over 10 sacks. So, we got a first question here on the live here. Deb says, my first live question is, where am I? LOL. I looked at the private page earlier and saw that my status is still pending. Deb, let me check that afterwards here for you. I'll verify what's going on because if you're pending, I'll get you in. I got you. All right, next question here. Who is actually, I should say this is a two-parter here. We had two people ask a similar kind of question here. So I'm going to put both their questions here out there. So first of the two-parter was who is the next Giant to get an extension? And then someone else asked separately, what do you guys think the next move is now that the Thomas deal is done? So I'm going to give it that, like I said, as a combined answer there because the next move overall will probably be picking up some bottom of the roster kind of guy as the training camp goes, as the rosters get filled out there, maybe pick up a players who they got cut by the team at some point during training camp. That's typical. That's going to happen. I don't think this point in the year it's reasonable to assume we get a bigger name guy out there of any kind because really there's not that many. Let's be honest. If we get any kind of decent name you've heard of kind of signing going on in the next couple of weeks, it's going to be probably at the linebacker position because it means that the coaches probably aren't happy in that scenario with Beavers and McFadden. I don't see that happening. If you watch the show on a regular basis, I have a ton of faith in Beavers. I think Beavers going to do great things. I really do. So we'll see what happens there, but that's the only thing I think of there. But as far as the extension part, which is why I say it's a two-parter, that they may have meant that as opposed to the bottom level kind of guy that we might sign. I think the next extension, it's safe to say, is Xavier McKinney. Saquon cannot sign one till after the year's over. So, you got to make the assumption that it won't be him for that reason alone. Plus, obviously, they could have done it this offseason. Didn't work out. So you can't even say they're going to make one, big contract next year. So Xavier McKinney, though, I think we all know this team holds in pretty high regard overall. He's a very good player overall. I think if it wasn't for the hand injury, that might have got done this season. Or you could also make the case that if it wasn't for so many other deals having to get made, it might have gotten done. Look at all the deals we had to do. We had the long-term deal we had to do with DJ. We had to get the contract situation with Saquon figured out. We got the long-term deal done with Sexy Dexy. We got the long-term extension done with Andrew Thomas. That's a lot of work for one offseason. That's a lot of freaking money. That's a lot of work. So I think that's something that, like I said, Dory Jackson will probably be. I'm sorry, but we'll get the comments here. We'll get to that in a second. Xavier McKinney will probably be the guy who you'll see getting the next big contract overall. But here's another contract question from Deb as well, saying, do you see them extending Adoree Jackson? And I really wish they would have already, to be very frank with you, Deb. I think that he is far and away one of the most important players on our entire defense. I think he is, no question, obviously. And I think anybody who says otherwise is crazy if they say that this is the wrong statement to make. He is by far our best corner on this team, on a defense that really depends on cover corners. That's something we've seen with Wink's defense in the past. What happened when he doesn't have them when he was over in Baltimore? A cover corner is so important in Wink's defense. If we lose him, unless Deonte Banks has just an amazing rookie year, it's going to be an issue. But the fact that I haven't heard any talk of an extension whatsoever with Adoree Jackson tells me the Giants are hesitant to do it. I mean, I'd have to guess it's probably the injury histories. It's probably also a little bit of the fact that he's going to be in his upper 20s now. He's a guy who depends on his athleticism overall. So, it's right around the time you start losing a step or so. I hate to say it that way because it's still very young, but, he's not the mid-20s guy anymore at that point. So, do they sit there and go, you know what? We like him. We want to keep him, but we don't want to pay him when he starts declining. He's 27 years old this year. So next year, 28. Let's say hypothetically, if you sign him during the 3 or 4 year deal, you're now signing until he's 31, 32. That's not usually the best to do with an athletic corner, especially one with an injury history. But again, I'd love to keep him longer term. I just love to have it be a scenario where the Giants can get out of it if they have to, if that scenario happens. So, but again, when we don't hear anything when he's got 1 year left, that's not usually a very good thing to be seeing there. So, all right, next question we got here. Will Saquon meet his incentives to get the extra money? And obviously, that's referring to the new contract that Saquon Barkley just signed there. He's got a couple of incentives there. So the first part of it is the Giants have to go ahead and make the playoffs. The second half of it, sorry, the second quarter of it, I should say, there's 4 parts of this. The second quarter of it is he has to get 1,300 rushing yards or more. Then he also has to get 11 touchdowns, receiving, rushing combo that the contract didn't specify. And then he also has to get 65 catches. So the first part, the playoffs. I do think the Giants will make the playoffs. I think that they'll have a good year again. I don't expect a dominant season out of them. I don't think they're that good yet. But I do think they're going to take a leap forward by having some of the offensive weapons they were clearly missing last year. Let's be honest. Clearly, they were missing these guys. So I do see that part of it hitting. So now the other 3 are all, once that qualifier of the Giants making the playoffs, the other 3 each individually get him $303,000. So the first one, 1,300 rushing yards. Now, if you look at Saquon's career overall, we've talked about this before. He's really had 2 of the 5 years have been good. 2 of those years, he hit 1,300 yards. 3 of those seasons, he didn't. So again, the law of averages tell me he might not get that again. Plus, even the 2 years he got 1,300 rushing yards. His rookie year, he had 1,307. His past season here, 1,312. It's not like he got those numbers far and away. He barely got those numbers. Barely got those numbers. Now, he also rushed the ball a lot more than they expected to. If you listen to the way he talked and stuff like that, it's not something that was expected to go into the season. It was just an issues with the passing and all that kind of stuff, according to Saquon, his interview we had there not too long ago. So if you assume that his rushing numbers go down, his rushing attempts go down because of the fact that there'll be more pass heavy this year because they'll have actual passing weapons, receiving weapons this year, then the only way he gets 1,300 yards is if he averages a very high average. So he had 4.4 last year. When he hit 1,300 yards as a rookie, he had a 5.0. He's going to have over 5 yards a carry to get 1,300 yards. And I don't know if that's realistic to expect that. That's a pretty high number there. Mid to high 4s is probably more where he'll end up. He'll probably end up, if I had to make a guess here, assuming he's healthy, which is a whole other issue, more like 1,100-1,200 yards. And I think that's a realistic number. So I don't see him getting that one there. Then we had the total touchdowns at 11. So again, you got to go to the history here. In those 2 seasons that he rushed for over, for 1,300 yards, which were 2 good years. So you take out the sophomore year as well, because he had just over 1,000 years of sophomore year. But those 2 really good seasons he had 10 touchdowns rushing last year, 11 rushing his rookie year. So 11 is a safe number when, again, we're talking combined here between receiving and rushing. So I think he'll get that one. The last one that he had there was having 65 catches. So again, law of averages there. Can't stress that enough. When you guys are betting on stuff like this, because I know a lot of people bet on stuff from the preseason, how many passing yards, how many rushing yards, look at history. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So the only time this man did that was his rookie year. 91 receptions that year. The other years, 52, 6, 41, 57. So, you got to look at the roster is this year. There's more receiving weapons than there ever was. In the entire time that Saquon's been a Giant here. This is a stacked group. Again, there's no alpha dog except for Waller. But there's legit wide receivers all up and down this roster. So I got to think that he's probably not going to hit that number because that ball is going to get spread around so much that he probably won't. So in the end, it's him winning one of the 3 bonuses there and getting the qualifier to get the money. So we'll get a $303,000 bonus at that point for it. All right. Let's see here. We got a couple of comments here. Another question here. Jackie says, sexy Dexy. And 30 is the new 20. No one says that above the age of 30. Let me assure you on that one. Soul Brother number one, what's up? It says, what's good, Drew? Can't wait to see Waller get multiple touchdowns on the Cowgirls week 1. So I'm going to say this. This is not a question necessarily, but I'm going to word this as a question for you. When you say, can't wait to see Waller get multiple touchdowns on the Cowboys there in week 1, I'm going to say he does. If you're watching what's going on right now at training camp, they are utilizing him in the red zone like crazy. I think he's going to have a killer game if he's healthy there, because they're going to want to set the tone for the season right off the bat. Look at what we had last year. All our losses pretty much were against the division. Just against the Eagles and the Cowboys alone was 5 of our losses. That's a huge percentage against those two teams. The Giants are going to want to set the tone. And they're going to set the tone by using their big weapon. So, yeah, Waller is going to absolutely ball out against the Cowboys that week 1. That's for sure. As Jackie says, lies to my saying 30 is not the new 20. It's not. 40 is definitely not the new 30. You too. I can assure everybody on that one too. That's for sure. All right. Next question is, who starts at left guard? And that's one of the positions I know a lot of people are looking at overall. So far, the first training camp practice, it was Josh Azudu, the second-year player at North Carolina. Now, today was Ben Bredesen, who's obviously a guy we've had in the last couple of years from a trade we had a couple of years ago at Baltimore. One of the few good trades Gettleman did make. And I still think it's going to be Ben Bredesen. I just do. Something just tells me he's the better player overall. And maybe it's just because when he was healthy last year, he looked like he turned a corner. He looked like he was better than he was prior. But something tells me Ben Bredesen is going to be the left guard. And I think Josh Azudu is going to be that guy that basically is, if anybody gets hurt, Josh Azudu takes his spot. Keep in mind, he's played tackle before as well. So he has an outside chance even of playing tackle in the NFL if need be in a pinch. But he'll definitely be the first guy to step in at the guard position on either side. And even if the center gets hurt, hypothetically, which we'll get to the center stuff in a second here. But even if the center gets hurt, Ben Bredesen moves over to center. Josh Azudu goes in at left guard at that point. So, again, Ben Bredesen will work. And I think in the end, I think he'll be the guy who will go ahead and get that left guard spot. I think he's actually, seriously, I think he's going to lock it down, to be very frank, for a little while. I think he's going to be the I wouldn't say long term, but at least the immediate term left guard for the New York Giants the next year or two. And especially depending what happens with Glowinski this year, Josh Azudu, that might be his spot as right guard. So we'll have to see. We talked about it before in the show. Glowinski's got a history of being a much better player than he was last year. And I think he will snap back to that because history's shown that's what he is. So, but if he doesn't, Josh Azudu might be on the right side long term. That's for sure. All righty. We got a question here from Mike. What's up, Mike? It says, who do you think might be the biggest surprise on the roster? And that also doubles with one of the questions we had here as well of who will be the surprise star this year? And obviously last year, the surprise person was Isaiah Hodgins. It just kind of came out of nowhere and was a big time player for us there. I think the big star that we're going to have coming out of this year is, I really think something just tells me that Darian Beavers is going to have, I don't want to say a Pro Bowl year or anything crazy like that, but I think he's going to have a year that people are like, okay, wow, okay, the preseason that we saw in him was legit. And it's weird for me to have this kind of trust in a player off of just a preseason last year. Those of you guys have heard me talk about Colin Johnson and guys like that, where I'm like, okay, don't buy into the hype. It was just the preseason, blah, blah, blah. But Darian Beavers looked very, very good, even when he was out there in the beginning of the preseason games. Remember, Blake Martinez didn't play in the beginning of the preseason. So Beavers was out there, and he looked good. So something tells me he's going to be the guy who's going to be the kind of surprise player there. And one of the biggest things I'm seeing, from people reporting from training camp as well, is that Micah McFadden is having trouble covering Darren Waller a lot more than Darian Beavers is. Now, anybody has trouble covering this guy. We talked about what a matchup nightmare he is overall. But when it's a noticeable difference, it tells me Darian Beavers is just a better cover guy. We've been looking for a guy in the middle to cover forever. So, like I said, I think he'll have a good year overall there. Now, a second question we had, which kind of also rolls into your question, Mike, as well, I could put as a two-parter here, is what Giant will disappoint the most this season? And I almost hate to answer a question like that because I don't want to put it out there in the world. But it was asked, and I said, hey, listen, if you ask a question, we're gonna talk about it here. So the guy who I think is going to disappoint this season is actually going to be Isaiah Hodgins, who I mentioned a minute ago. He was utilized a lot last year in the second half. He was utilized because he had to be. Who else was there? Who are you throwing the ball to? Kenny Galladay? He's going to have a lot more competition for the ball now. And keep in mind, this is also a guy that prior to the Giants having him, he really didn't see the field that much. So I can't sit there and say this is a guy with a track record we just happen to luck out and get and that kind of stuff. That's not the scenario at all. This was a guy that was a practice squad player for the Bills. The same Bills that were looking for more receivers all season long. They signed, if you remember, very late in the season, they signed, different receivers, especially Cole Beasley, trying to add to that room. So, when you look at the season he had overall in the 8 games with us, he had 351 yards. Obviously, a lot of that was later on. He didn't start the first couple of games, but for his career, he's got 392 yards, guys. Wasn't exactly lighting it up. So, again, I hate to put that out in the world because I want every Giant to have an amazing season. I want every Giant to excel. I want it to be where cut day is the hardest day possible for Shane Dable. But when it boils down to it, that's who I'm going to say is probably going to be. Yeah, that's probably who it's going to be there. So we'll see there. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully there is nobody that's at all disappointing there for the New York Giants there because nobody wants a disappointing player. Obviously, we all want them all to succeed. We're all Giant fans here, unless we got any occasional Cowboys or Eagle fans that pop on here. We do get that sometimes. Soul Brother number 1 says Deonte Banks biggest disappointment. I hate this again. You guys get me put negative stuff out there. I hate to be the negative guy. I'm not high on Banks. I've said that from the get-go. We talked about him pre-draft, and I didn't think he was a first-round talent even. I really didn't. Obviously, Wink was ecstatic when we got him. So hopefully he knows something I don't know. Obviously, he's a little more involved with the process than I am. But yeah, he's a player I didn't really like too much coming out. I expect him to have issues. Most rookie corners do have issues. That's the reason why I wouldn't call him a biggest disappointment, just because of the fact that it's going to be hard to disappoint me when I expect you to struggle your first year. That's normal. That's what most rookies do. We can't expect every rookie to come in like Sauce Gardner and Tyreek Woolen and be a guy that you go, oh, wow, this guy's a shutdown corner. That's not normal as a rookie. That takes a couple of years you should develop that. So, as he also puts, I hope I'm wrong. I hope you're wrong too, man. I hope you're wrong too. We got Connor here as well. What's up, Connor? Says, I'm late. What do you think of the defensive tackle they got from the XFL? Or do you think he's just a camp body? Listen, I'm going to tell you, anytime you get a player from the XFL, it's a camp body that they hope maybe turns into something else. The guy took his shot at getting some playing time, took his shot at being a guy who some NFL team might want to pick up and see what they get in him. And the Giants are taking that shot. So I can't be upset at that point if that they got him, because it's going to be a low-cost move with no risk whatsoever. Last year, he was undrafted rookie free agent with the Niners. So he really hasn't seen the NFL yet, but there's people in the NFL that have seen him, and it's the Niners. Not to make them seem like they're like up there like that, but they are to a degree. I mean, the Niners have been a successful franchise with this current regime, especially on defense. They built a damn good defense. So if they let this guy go, chances are he wasn't NFL worthy. Did he learn something in the XFL that made him, NFL worthy? Hopefully. I'd love a nice cheap pickup. That'd be great. But chances are, I wouldn't count on for much. That's for sure. As my whole book just fell down, if you saw there. Connor says, "LOL, Galladay. Do you think somebody will sign Galladay?" I don't think so. Honestly, I think he's done, and I think the biggest shot he has, as ironically as we're just talking about Atkins a minute ago, there, I think the biggest shot he has is going into the XFL or the USFL or one of the other leagues, balling out and showing the NFL world he's not done yet. And chances are he's not done. He's got a history of being better than what he showed last year. Even the year before, he was much better. He had what I think like 500 yards his first year with the Giants. I got to look it up here, but I'm not saying he's ever going to be a stud again, but he's 1 year removed from having 521 yards with the Giants. So he'll probably be somebody that I think will go ahead and at some point pop back up, maybe injuries or something like that, or taking that shot with the XFL. But I'm telling you right now, if I'm him, I would go in one of those leagues like that and to show I still got it, because he's 29 right now. So if he does a league like that next year, he's 30, which would put him at basically his last shot to really be in the NFL, be in there long term, and build his way back at that point. So because he's gonna have to do a 1 year deal, prove a deal, and then try to get the big deal. So it's kind of a scary age for him at 29 to be loose like that and looked at as one of the worst signings in one of the team's history. So let's get back to some of the questions we got here. So question is this Saquon's last year as a New York Giant? And that's a legit question, guys. And I would say it's probably 50-50. If I had to lean towards either direction, I would say probably is. Because I think the only way Saquon stays on past this year, barring him having like a record-breaking year, the Giants just couldn't let him go from a PR reason. Like if he has like a year like he had his rookie year of 1,400 yards and another 600-700 yards and receptions, that kind of thing, like borrowing that kind of season, the only way the Giants keep him, I think, again, is if they can tag him a second time. Now, the interesting question comes into be, as we talked about, Xavier McKinney before, and how I said he probably would be the next Giant to get an extension. Let's put this out there. What if he doesn't? What if Xavier McKinney does not get an extension with the Giants? Are you tagging him over Saquon? Legit question. What's harder to replace? A Pro Bowl running back or a very good safety? A lot of guys would tell you either side. Both of them have their pros and cons. Saquon's the better player. McKinney's the more important position. So we'd have to see which way they'd go. And I'll tell you this, if I had to bet on that, I would say probably they would go with Xavier McKinney. The Giants have shown they don't want to sign him for crazy money. He's shown he doesn't want to take less than crazy money. Very well could be Saquon's last year. And I hope everything works out to a way that helps, is good for the Giants and good for Saquon in the end. Because by all accounts, Saquon's a great guy. But I also want what's best for the Giants in the end. If it's not Saquon, it's not Saquon. We'll have to see which way that goes. Let's see here. We got next question. Who will start for us at wide receiver? So I think that's going to change throughout the year. I do. I think that's going to, throughout the year, you're going to see some subtle changes to that overall. Maybe even some not so subtle, depending on how things go with injury guys coming back and that kind of stuff there. But my gut tells me week one, at least, will probably be Darius Slayton, Isaiah Hodgins on the outside, with Paris Campbell as a starting slot wide receiver. My one big question mark is what happens with Sterling Shepard. If Shep is healthy, he's going to push one of those two spots. And honestly, you could easily make the case that if he's fully healthy and he's the Shep of old, he's probably better than both those two guys. He's probably, if he's the old Shep, the best wide receiver on this roster. But I could see two different scenarios where either they go, okay, we don't want to rush you back too quick, or we want to conserve your touches so you can actually stay healthy for once. And they just keep him on the sidelines anyway and bring him out, certain passing downs and that kind of stuff. Because the guy's clutch. He's proved that throughout his career. He's a clutch guy. But I think that's who it's going to be overall. I think you're going to see, again, I think you'll see Darius Slayton and Isaiah Hodgins on the outside and Paris Campbell starting as your slot receiver there. All righty. Next question we got there. What happens if Daniel Jones takes a step back? And that's a scary question, folks. If Daniel Jones takes a step back, we're stuck with him for 2 years. We're stuck point blank for 2 years with him. And by all accounts, Tyrod Taylor has not looked good so far in training camp. I've seen a lot of throws of his that have been way overthrown. So, yeah, that's a really bad scenario for us. Not that any NFL team wouldn't be screwed if their starting quarterback takes a step back. Ask the Denver Broncos that. Think their quarterback took a step back last year? But I think overall, if he were hypothetically to take a step back, the Giants would probably bring in some competition for him next year, whether it be a rookie or a veteran, in the hopes that he would turn it around. And in the following year, if he didn't, he gone. We've talked about this before. The way this contract is written, after 2 years, they can get out of it, but they have to. Obviously, I'm hoping for long term. I want the long term answer at the most important position in the entire NFL. But if not, that's the nuclear option we got there. Is he plays down this year, they bring in some competition for the following year, and if he doesn't straighten it out, he's gone. I don't see that happening personally. Like I said, I've already got a record of saying I think he'll have a better season this year. He's got weapons for the first time in forever. I really think that's going to be, something overall that it'd be, is going to be a good move for the Giants to have, him on the long term there, because this contract he signed, it's gonna look much better. I'm telling you, as more and more guys sign, it really is, because this is, like I said, we already talked about when Herbert signed his contract there. He's now between 10 and 12 in the annual value. We still got more guys to go. So he's going to be paid like an average quarterback, playing above average. It'll be a good deal, I think, overall. I really do. Got another question from Connor here. He said, I really wanted Alex Mago from, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm not too familiar with the guy, from Stallions, but Green Bay got him. Thought he had perfect for Daniel Jones backup, or if Daniel Jones didn't work out, he filled in perfect. What do you think? I'm not too familiar with the guy, to be very honest with you. I know he was, had a really good year with the USFL overall. I think he won their championship, and they won the championship, and he had like 4 touchdowns in the championship game. I think I'd read that when he signed on with the Packers there. I don't really follow the minor leagues there too much there, to be very frank with you there. I think I'd read he was like 27 years old though too. So again, 27-year-old quarterback. I'm not so sure that's the guy that I want there long term like that. I'd honestly rather take a shot with a young kid. It's like 1 or 2 years out at that point. I would have loved if they drafted a guy this draft. I said they should have. We talked about that, leading up to the draft. They should have drafted a third quarterback. Instead, they got an undrafted free agent that by all accounts has been horrible. So might have been a mistake they didn't do that, but we shall see. I think in the end, they weren't too worried about a backup quarterback because of the fact they had Tyrod Taylor. who has proven to be a good backup quarterback year in, year out in the NFL there. But that's a move that could bite him. Hopefully he doesn't, because hopefully Jones stays healthy, which he's only done once last year, and balls out like we're hoping here. All right. Mike comes back with a question here, says, who do you think the punt returner will be? If I had to guess based on who I've seen working with the punt so far, I would say Eric Ray, the running back, the rookie running back we got there. Um, I would love to see, depending on how involved in the offense he's going to be, I would love to see Jalen Hyatt be looked at for that role. Just extremely fast guy, extremely shifty guy. I think he'd be perfect for that. And it'd be a good way of kind of getting him used to NFL if you can't put him out there that much because he can't make it too much as a wide receiver yet. Because he's a guy that I think is going to take some work to get out there. I know a lot of the knock on him was he can't run routes. I don't think his route running is as much the issue. I think it's more as the issue is he didn't really run an NFL style offense in Tennessee. He's going to have to get used to a little different of an offense there. That's going to take a little bit of time. Hopefully he's a quick learner, but it's a good spot to put him in where he still gets some NFL experience. And the biggest thing is it keeps Adoree Jackson out of the punt return spot. I don't want to see Adoree Jackson anywhere near the punt return spot again. All right. We got one more question here. And if anybody else posts any more questions in the meantime, we'll get them up here too for you. Last question we had there that was relayed to us before the show started was, do the Giants make it back to the playoffs this year? And I kind of already answered that one before because I did say that. I shouldn't have said that. I didn't realize that was one of the questions on the list here. But yeah, I do think the Giants will make it back to the postseason here, the playoffs. I know a lot of people are writing them off as like the fourth best team in the NFC East, which to me is just freaking crazy. The Commanders don't have a quarterback. They're clearly the last place in this whole division here. The Eagles have a lot of new pieces, a lot of young pieces that were with the team last year, but now have to play bigger roles. They could easily take a step back. I wouldn't expect any bad. This is not even me being Eagle bashing. I'm trying to be legit here. I think they very well could take a little bit of a step back. And instead of being, a 13, 14 win kind of team, they could be, a 10, 11, 12 kind of team at that point. So they'll still be very good, but they might take a slight step back because of the changes, losing both coordinators, losing so many people in free agency, having all these young players are counting on. You can only put together so much of the Georgia defense in the NFL and expect good things to happen. I mean, some of those guys aren't going to pan out. Some are. That's life in the NFL. The Cowboys, don't have Zeke. Pollard's coming off an injury. Dak had a really bad year last year, led the league in interceptions, even though he was hurt for about a third of the year there. I mean, defense will be defense. I mean, they'll have a great defense. I have no doubt on that one. But if the offense can't get it going, we've seen what happens when the offense can't get it going and the defense is very good. Reminds us of the Giants last year, right? So, it's a very a three-team race. I really think that. It's a three-team race for the division. Any of those three could win, and I wouldn't be shocked. If the Commanders won, I'd be shocked. But any of them could be a guy that would win, a team that could win the division. I wouldn't be shocked. The Eagles, the Cowboys, or the Giants. History tells us it won't be the Eagles because typically you don't go back-to-back wins. So that even helps our chances even more. You get a 50-50 shot. Let's see here. Connor has another question. He says, will Washington QB surprise us? Because they seem to believe in him by not getting anybody else. Honestly, I think what the situation is more with them, and maybe I'm thinking too far into this, but I've been asking myself the same question. Why did the Commanders not get a quarterback? Now, they did get, I believe, Jacoby Brissett is now their backup quarterback. So they did get a legit bottom-tier NFL quarterback. But I think what's going to happen is I think they're purposely trying to see what they got in the young kid they drafted last year. And if he doesn't pan out, worst comes to worst is Sam Howell being a bad quarterback puts them in a position to get a really good pick next year in a QB draft that people have been touting is very good so far. Again, I feel like that conversation happens every year. It's either a very good one or it's a very bad one, and it flip flops even during the season sometimes. This was supposed to be the year of all the good quarterbacks. There was a couple of quarterbacks there, but there was nobody that crazy, good at that point. There, they had two quarterbacks really that were touted as being amazing. We've seen how many players that were like, "Oh, this guy's the first overall pick next year in the draft," and then the season happens and he drops down to like the mid first round, if not the second round. So we'll have to see what happens there. But I do think that's what Washington is doing. Is they're saying, "Let's just throw the kid out there. Let's see what he does. And worst comes to worst, he fails. We have a damn good draft pick next year." But I hope not for Ron Rivera's sake, at least, because as much as obviously I don't root for the Commanders, I root for the Giants. I do like Rivera. There's something about the guy. Like the guy's a winner. Wouldn't shock me though if Commanders get rid of him and they'll just ruin the whole thing and blow it all up like that, because that'd be a very Commander thing to do, is to get Ron Rivera, a good coach like that, and get rid of him. As Connor just asked, but will they keep Rivera, get a new head coach? We'll have to see. Keep in mind, it's brand new ownership there. Brand new ownership. What does this new group want to do at that point? What is their plan? You don't make a purchase that is in the billions. That's the billions with a B. You don't make that kind of purchase without having a plan for what you're going to do. So, and we'll have to see what they enact that plan. But I can't imagine they go in there and go, "Here's a guy who's taking a team to the Super Bowl. Here's this guy who wins pretty much everywhere he goes," and just get rid of him like that. That just seems a little odd there. So we'll have to see what happens overall there, but it just doesn't seem like a normal thing at that point. But again, new ownership. They have to be better than Dan Schneider. They have to be better than Dan Schneider. I mean, there's no getting worse than Dan Schneider, that's for sure. But yeah, we'll have to see what happens there overall. So before we get going here, we're about to get going, I do see someone in the green room sitting there. Oh, yes, he's sitting there. The Roberto himself. And I just lost him as I said that. As I said that, I lost him. But yeah, guys. Any other questions? Oh, if Rob's coming back, that's going to be the question. Do we keep Rob? That's going to be the question. Does Rob come back for good? I see him smiling there. Hold on. We're gonna see if we can get Rob in here. We're gonna gotta change all the backgrounds and all that kind of fun stuff now. Gotta do that first. Let's see. There we go. And let's see. Do we have Rob? There he is. There's the Rob. And we lost him as he's waving. Alrighty, guys. Well, we'll be back again on Monday. So hopefully at that point, Rob's able to stay on. Like I said, he had some pop-ups. He's just popping in towards the end here to say hi to everybody before we go. Let's see. Do we have Rob? Do we have you, Rob? There he is. He's waving hi to everybody.
Hi, people.
There he is. There he is. So, yeah, you made it just in time for us to end, Rob.
My favorite part. I mean, what?
Connor says, where, oh, where has our Roberto gone? As we lose Rob again. All right, guys. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and call it a night then, because I thought he was going to come on real quick to say at least hi and bye to everybody there. But yeah, we'll be back again for you guys Monday night. We'll go ahead and have some more news here for you guys as we get Rob back again for the fifth time. We'll be back again Monday night here. We'll be back for you guys going over everything here with the training camp updates. I think it's probably at that point I'll have a couple of practices to go over with you guys. So we'll go over the updates there. Again, we're live every single Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and my LinkedIn profile. We're also, of course, on every podcast platform, audio-wise, usually about an hour or two after the show's over. So that'll be every single, Spotify, Amazon, Apple Podcast, all the fun ones there as we get Rob back for the fifth time now. Let's see.
Yes, Drew's LinkedIn.
My LinkedIn. And if you enjoyed this episode here, This was done as a very first Q&A. So the Q&A is going to be part of our sponsorship program here. So if you enjoyed the podcast and want to sponsor the podcast and do a subscription with us, starts at just $5 a month. And you can go to buymeacoffee.com/2 Giant Goofballs. And then you can go ahead and see the sponsorship page there for both the membership and for the one-time subscription as well. So again, guys, if you like that, go ahead and pop on there. We'd appreciate it there. Either way, like I said, we'll be still doing the 3 shows. That'll give you just an extra show at that point there every single month. So again, we will see you guys again on Monday. Appreciate you guys stopping in. Appreciate all the questions as well. Glad we're able to get to every single one of them there. As always, Giant fans, go G-Man! Go G-Man!
Thanks for listening to Two Giant Goofballs, a New York Giants podcast. We appreciate your support. If you made it this long, you must have enjoyed it. So I am sure you have followed us on all the social media platforms. Of course, you have subscribed to the show on your favorite app as well and given us a top rating. Right? Right? Right?